Do, 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 do. All right. Well, Lucine did. I didn't text her, but I'm assuming she's going to be joining us. She just may be. She may just be a little late. So um, we'll get started. I know first on the agenda this evening is just kind of an update on where we are with American Rescue Plan funding. I didn't want to blindside the administration. I just want to kind of keep this in front of us. If we don't have any kind of specific thoughts at this time, it'd be a good time to step through what these funds can and cannot be used for. And I don't even know who's the most versed in this, who's gotten closest to this information. I've read through it once briefly. I know it's a rather lengthy document, but I'm sure somebody has kind of wrapped their hands around this a little bit. So Abe, I'll start with you and we'll go from there.
Certainly, Council President, thank you for the opportunity to present. I know we only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to share my screen if that's okay, because I have a PowerPoint presentation that paints some very broad strokes. So can everybody see that? Yes? No?
Not yet, no.
Okay. All right, how about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good, terrific, thank you. All right, so we're going to get through this in 20 minutes. I'm going to paint some very broad strokes and then allow time for questions and answers. And of course, any follow-up information that you desire, I will be more than happy to make sure that you have it. So as you know, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan into law, which was House Resolution 139 on March 11th of 2021 for a total of $360 billion for state and local governments. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania will be receiving, or has probably received already, $7.1 billion, Berks County, $81.6 million, and local governments are going to receive over $130 billion, with cities receiving a lion's share of that, $65.1 billion. Now, this represents 19 times the annual CDBG grant, although this money, I have to say, is not CDBG. The city of Reading is going to receive a total of $61,134,970. And I'm happy to say that the first tranche arrived last Wednesday, June the 9th, a total of $30,567,486. Now, Jamar Kelly, our finance director, has informed me that he is going to separate this into a separate investment account so it's properly insured. So he has been in the process of speaking with several banks in order to make this happen. The second tranche will be deposited by the end of March 2022. And it's important to note, folks, that we're going to do this correctly. We get one bite at this apple. We want to do it in a very methodical, thoughtful way. The city has until December 31st of 2024 to commit the funds and has until December 31st, 2026 to spend the funds. The mayor has given me a directive that every nickel is to be spent accordingly and in the proper fashion, and it has to be accounted. We have had several meetings already. We've had an internal working group that's met on 4 occasions that has included Public Works, Finance, Fire Department, Community Development, and the library. We've had deliberations on internal versus external requests for funding, and I'll get to that in a subsequent slide. And the mayor has made it clear that he wishes to emphasize infrastructure spending. This is generational. This is going to be something that will allow us to fix our streets, sidewalks, parks, playgrounds, quality of life issues that need to be addressed. We have been on many webinars, National League of Cities, for instance, the Pennsylvania Municipal League. Senator Bob Casey's office has had several webinars with us. And we're going to support public health expenditures according to the plan, address negative impacts caused by public health emergencies, replace lost public sector revenue, We're going to invest in water, sewer, and broadband. So those are the things that are approved under the United States Department of Treasury's guidelines. A 151-page document that we've been pouring through on a daily basis the last several weeks. And there's a lot of backup material that's also available. Anyone wants to do a deeper dive, I'm more than happy to provide you with necessary links. So let's talk about what it can and cannot be used for. It cannot be used for replenishing the budget, the rainy day fund or reserve accounts. Cannot be used for personnel beyond 12/31/24. So we're not really going to create a lot of positions that go beyond that scope. It cannot be used for paying interest on principal or outstanding debt. Cannot be used for pension deposits, and financial records are required for 5 years. Again, we're going to take the record keeping very seriously to ensure that we comport with all of the regulations. Now, one of the uses that is allowable is a consultant that will assist us with managing and administering the funds. We've had one very productive meeting with a firm that handles American Rescue Plan dollars, and we decided that we would get 2 more estimates, so we have 3 to compare from to give the city the best bang for its buck. Tourism and hospitality fund aid is permissible, and I want everyone to know that we have had discussions with the Santander Arena, Pennsylvania Americana region. We've had some discussions with the Pagoda Foundation. We've had some discussions with the Reading Fighting Phils and the Berks History Center. Now, the reason why we don't have dollar amounts attached to these folks is because we have asked them to provide something in writing to us. These were just preliminary discussions, talk about what was eligible, what's not eligible. Many of you have requested meetings with stakeholders, and we're in the process of fulfilling those requests. And we have put out feelers in terms of appointments with some of these folks that are interested in receiving more information. Other eligible uses are businesses showing declines in employment and revenue. Recipients must show records of negative impacts, and disproportionately impacted communities may also qualify. And lastly, vaccine incentive programs may also be eligible. So I painted some broad strokes there for you. I have a mountain of information that I'm willing to share with each and every one of you. And there's my direct line. There's my email address for the public. If any members of the public who are watching tonight would like some follow-up information, just know that we are there. Again, we're going to take this very seriously in terms of ensuring that every nickel is spent accordingly. We're not going to rush this through. We're going to make sure that those internal meetings continue. We have discussed ways to ensure that the public knows more about this. We're still informing the public that these funds are available. And fortunately, the first tranche did come through last Wednesday. So I'm more than happy to answer any and all questions and provide information. I see Donna's hand up.
Yes, thanks. And thanks for this presentation. It certainly helps to understand what, the background of these funds. I just want to, for the public's sake, get a clarification. Any expenditures must be approved by the governing body in any municipality, correct? That would be council. So it is like any other allocation. It would have to come through a recommendation from the administration to city council for final expenditure, correct?
That is correct. That is correct. Yes,
The
indeed.
normal protocol, majority rules, all that. Is that by ordinance or by resolution?
That's a good question.
That's by ordinance typically, yeah.
Okay,
Very
okay,
good.
just double checking. Is that in agreement with legal? That is ordinance then?
We can certainly cross that path when we get there, but I would think it would be a resolution. Most of our contracts are approved by resolution, but I haven't reviewed the.
No. Our budgetary changes are done via ordinance. So this would be moving funds out of one line item into another as we proceed with different projects. The other thing is, well, I know there's a number of hands that want to go up. Thank you, Abe, for that update. I think that's helpful. And Donna will come back to you, but it's nice to know that we've got, you know, at least 3 years of solid planning to put this money to work. Not that we're going to wait 3 years, but as Abe mentioned, we don't need to, you know, make rash decisions. And we have up to 5 years to spend it. So I think that's helpful as well. So a lot of money can be used for a lot of good things. As Abe mentioned, a lot of outside entities are knocking on the door, and some rightfully so. I think there's some joint collaborations with perhaps other entities that we may be able to partner with to help those groups where it makes sense. So I think it's good that everyone has a broad understanding as of today where the money's at, what it can be used for, and what the timelines look like, so that we can all say, all right, now we have some time to plan. I just wanted to make that point because that stuck out to me in the presentation. I go back to Donna, and then after Donna, we'll go from there. Did you have another question, Donna?
No, that pretty much answered it. And thank you, Abe. I appreciate it. I
You're welcome.
look forward to working with everyone. And I'm not sure how you're doing all the internal ones, but if members of council occasionally could be pulled in just to be updated, that would be great. Thank you.
Happy
We're
to
going to
do
go
it.
to Marcia, Johanny, and then I believe Jamar.
Yeah, and I'm going to focus on the fiscal end of it, being familiar with the allocation of federal dollars. Normally, when federal dollars come down to a state agency and then down to local governments, there is still a request for proposal process that delineates the proposed use of the money based on priority needs of the community. And I really feel it's so important so that we have a legacy of how we spent this money to do our diligence and to come up with an operating process that follows that exactly, so that when it comes to council at the end of the day, that we know what the process is, because of course, there are a lot of people clamoring for the money. People have great needs, but we have to set priorities on how we spend it and have that checklist to make sure that it meets all the needs. And so it's money that's looked at as being long-term investment, and that there be a clarity on, you know, how we establish those priorities. So for me, I think being a council member, I would like to see those guidelines first before there's any thought of even coming close to coming down with recommendations, that we have a chance to discuss them. We know what they are for CDBG. That's been set by the federal government. So maybe that can be used as a template to start out with.
Certainly, and I'm happy to share a very comprehensive document as well that talks about guidelines. And it's one of the reasons why we're going to reach out to a consultant, see if they could help us through this process as well. As you see, this is just one document, and it's about 35 pages front and back. It's very, very detailed. So we're going to need some assistance. Again, yes, to your point, Counselor, we are definitely going to have specific guidelines in place with parameters that are clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Johanny?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Excuse
You're
me.
welcome.
So quick question. So the first amount that we received, you made mention that it's going into an investment account. So I know that an account was created for this money so that we can keep it separate. But when you say investment account, that to me is like money that there's interest being accrued in an account. Is that what's happening?
Yes, and I'll let Jamar handle the technical aspect of that transaction.
Yes, Counselor. We opened an initial checking banking account to receive the funds, but we can't hold them there because our checking account is not FDI insured up to $30 million. So that's why we have to move it over to an investment account. And we have a call tomorrow morning with our banker to discuss how we work out the machination of that process, and we will have an update for you after that. If I could touch on just a couple things while I have a second here. As Abe mentioned, part of why we're not rushing to spend anything is we're still working under what Treasury calls the interim final rule. We're expecting the final rule from Treasury to come in August, which will clarify any of the remaining discrepancies around guidelines and reporting and all of that fun stuff. So we're expecting a final rule from Treasury to come in August. One of the other questions, any sort of spending of the funding is still subject to the city's policy, purchasing policy and procedure manual. So we're not circumventing anything there, including council approvals for anything over $34,999. We are awaiting to schedule a meeting with our external auditor, Herbine, until we put a little bit more pen to paper on our specific outlines of a plan in terms of spending, is when we'll engage our external auditor, because they had some feedback they wanted to make sure we're aware of rather. The last thing I'll say, I was discussing internally with our finance department staff today, sort of parallel to the 2022 budget process. We want to run a specific budget discussion for what's going to be Fund 47, the American Rescue Plan funds, so that, again, we have that conversation and public level input about how the funds are going to be used, again, before we really start spending down on anything in a major way. Thank you, Abe and Council President.
Thank
All
you.
right, additional, go ahead, Johnny.
Also, obviously we're gonna take it slow because we want to do things the right way, which I completely agree. But will we be updated on an every so often basis in terms of the progress? Because I'd like to, I wanna, when should we anticipate like a template or a rough draft of some of the ideas of how this money is gonna be spent? And also, like, when I look at one of the categories, which is loss of revenue. So being that we lost revenue because of the admission tax, right? Because there were no activities, there were no event, like would you put whatever money we had allocated in the budget that obviously we didn't receive because of the pandemic, would you take that money and put it in that line item, for example? Just
Not, sorry, good.
No, I was going to say, first of all, let me just say yes to your first question is we will be happy to keep you updated on it. And if you have any questions in between meetings, by all means, you have my personal cell and you've got my email address. I'd be happy to walk through anything for you. And I'll just let Jamar handle that second part.
So in terms of specifics, I think September would be a good time frame to hold this to. Like I said, kind of parallel to the 22 budget discussions will be a budget discussion specific to the rescue plan funds. And we will have more specifics, spreadsheets, and all that fun stuff by that time as well.
And I will add, Johanny, and to all council members, if there are ideas on the use of these funds, there's going to be opportunities to share them, but don't hesitate to forward them on in the meantime. And to Marcia's point, I think by the end of the year, we should, as a community, have an idea how much we're going to kind of put aside for each bucket, of categories. And that may change a little bit. I'm sure the administration's formula. The key right now is the administration receiving these funds, gaining the understanding on what they can and cannot be used for, informing us as frequently as possible. And we'll keep this on the agenda pretty frequently, just so everyone remains apprised. We all know that all the existing controls are in place. Nothing can get moved around or spent without the body's authority. That's just the way our government's structured. So it's nice that, again, they put some time on this where we have some time to understand it and do the right thing. So Donna and then Marcia.
Yeah.
Parts of the question. One is the money that is allocated to Berks County. Is that exclusionary of Reading, or is part of that also available to come to the city? That's my first question. Does anyone know?
Hi, Jamar.
I don't believe it's exclusionary. I also would not expect any of it to come to the city.
Okay, fair enough. So it's something that's a possibility, but not a likelihood, more or less.
And for the public, I qualify that based on the lack of CARES Act funding that the city received proportionate to its population size.
Okay. And then secondly, that's hopefully something we can have conversations with going forward, that maybe we can preclude that from happening.
I leave.
But the second thing I would say, and it touches on what Marcia had said earlier, this is likely the biggest infusion of capital that we're receiving from the federal government proportionately since the Depression years. And we saw the major things that occurred in those days from Ottolani, our city reservoir, and Lake Ottolani, the work up on Skyline Drive and other public works kinds of projects. So I think it is so incredibly important, as Marcia said, that this is a legacy situation. This is something that hopefully 50, 100 years from now, folks will look back and say they did the right thing. They allocated it properly to what was best, what were the most critical needs. So I think we have to keep that in mind, along with all the other very, very important accountability points. What is the legacy that we're going to give future generations for this money? And I'm glad Marcia mentioned that, because that is incredibly, incredibly important, because 90 years later, we are benefiting from what happened in the FDR and the Roosevelt administration.
If I could give one specific example, part of the reason I think it's going to be advantageous to have the conversation in tandem with the budget is, for example, let's pick a random line on a CIP budget of HVAC repair for City Hall. So that's a project that Stan's looked into, and in reality, it's much more like 4 to 6 million than I think the 2 million or 1 million that we have in the CIP budget. By scoping that project out now and running the plan of implementation in tandem with the 2022 budget, we would be able to remove from the city CIP expense of HVAC repair for City Hall and move that over to rescue plan expense, because it would solve the issue of ventilation repair, system repair in a municipal facility. So during that sort of strategic, high level, not just thinking, but action regarding use of these funds are going to potentially free up general fund and or CIP level funding to park out in the outer years. And then in the short term, like you're saying, we use this fresh infusion of capital for targeted infrastructure projects, as the mayor also desires.
Jeff,
Go ahead, Strat, and then Marcia again. Strat, and Marcia, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
Go ahead, Strat, sir.
Jeff, on that list of agencies or companies or whatever you want to call them that were listed there, when it's determined what they're going to be getting, somehow or other, can we present this to the public at a big meeting, a council or someplace, to let them see exactly what we're doing before we vote on it?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. That is not an unreasonable request, and one that we take very seriously in terms of openness and transparency. So my answer is a resounding yes. We'll make that happen.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead, Marcia.
Okay, and this I'm going to direct to the council president and council members. But just as we did with the budget process, when we had questions, which are all good questions, and we have a great dialogue starting here, I think it would be important, as the questions are received by the administration, that they're put in writing and that they're answered in a way that all the body knows what the questions and answers were. So we all stay on the same page, and we're very mindful of how we communicate that back to our constituents, because I can see this very easily when you have this large amount of money, and again, people in dire straits who may need it, that it can sometimes get a little off course. And so I really think it's important for the public to understand what the process is going to look like and how they direct their questions. And then when the counselors have questions, how those are answered so that they can be visible to the public. I would prefer that as the answers come down, they be published on the website so we all know that we can reference our constituents to this is where you get the answers regarding this funding. That's the way it's done consistently with all federal and state monies, and I think we should follow that. That's what I meant when I was talking about process. Again, so not only do we have that legacy we're preserving, but our process becomes a legacy too, that it's shown that we are really spending this money in a meaningful and mindful way.
Okay, Johanny?
Yeah, and just one last comment. As you're meeting with organizations, because you listed some in your presentation, are
Mhm.
you surveying all the organizations, and whether for-profit or non-for-profit businesses, etc.? Are we doing some type of survey or analyzing the economic impact? Like, are we, whenever the decision is made as to how to use the funds for these entities, because I think you said something about an application process. So that would be made accessible and available to all the
Correct.
city, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
we're working on that internally and we'll have that to you when it's available. Yes.
Yeah, and I would emphasize a couple thoughts on these funds, guys. First, there were a lot of things available to a lot of entities during the pandemic, PPP loans and other. This is municipal funding aimed at, I think, shoring up municipalities and in some cases helping organizations who were not eligible for, PPP funds and other things. And there are some obvious ones that, that suffered. So there will be a soiree or a small amount that we might have to help in conjunction with others, and that makes sense. And then to everyone else's point, we want to show tangible results. Some of it we can support a budget by taking out a CIP line item, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, we want to have, I think, some broad-based statements and say, look, we repaired A, B, C, D, we restructured, whatever the end results were going to be. And I think Abe and the mayor are thinking along those lines. And remember one thing about this money, it's borrowed money, not only, not for the city or anything, but from the nation. I mean, there's been a lot of money spent on this CARES Act or this, whatever this is called. I've lost track of them all. And the country, spending a lot of money during this time, which probably should have, but I think the point's been well made. The city of Reading has to do its part to show, good, strong, tangible results, not only to show a legacy to the future, but the future is also going to be paying for this. So they need to see the results of this spending to shore up not only the infrastructure, but the livelihoods of everyone. So I agree with everyone. We have to be very careful. We want to make sure it's spent judiciously on projects that make sense. They're going to have a long-term impact for everybody. Go ahead, Donna.
Just one final thing, this, the requirements that Abe put forth so well, that as we educate the public, as the public understands who is potentially eligible, how applications need to be filled out, under what category they fall. Particularly the amounts that don't require councilmanic action, that it's not viewed as by the folks out there who justifiably most likely need it, organizations, that it's not viewed the way we used to look at state legislative money, like walking around money, that no one looks at it that way. Because it's easy for all the years that kind of money was available and given out, that people still might have that feeling about it, but that this is very strictly, adhered to. These are federal guidelines. You might like an organization or someone tremendously, they might not be able to be availed of it, but just the education to folks. So no one's thinking somebody's friend is getting something, neither the recipient nor the public thinking that it is any possible. I think that's so critical to get that point across, especially over the last few years and what the city has endured. So I think just the disposition of this procedure, the education, I mean, we have to be absolutely on target with our communications, our messages about this for everyone.
And Jeff, I just need to clarify one thing here, that CODA is a city-owned building, and the foundation is responsible for the operations, not the capital. I just wanted to clarify that for the public.
Yeah. All right, guys, I think that's a good overview of where we're at. That was the purpose of getting this on the agenda. My intent is to keep this on probably monthly. Once we just touch base, or maybe every 2 months.
Happy to do it.
We have everybody now has a basic understanding of what's coming in, when it can be spent on, and what the timelines look like. It's a good starting point. Any ideas should be channeled through the council and administrative managing director's office so that it can be considered as part of the planning. Johanny, did you have an additional comment?
Yes, while we're on the topic of funds and budgets, when should we anticipate resuming with our finance committee meeting?
Well, the only time I think we've operated kind of on a finance committee structure is during the budget season. Otherwise, the finance issues are sprinkled in as part of the overall committee, the whole agenda. So when we formulate into a new budget season, I guess Marcia's still our kind of acting finance committee chairperson. She will formulate kind of the budget component of it. You know, most of the finances are done during the budget season, including the capital budget and the general fund budget. So that would be the time where we put a little more focus on finance. Go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah, just to clarify, because I think it's important for the public to understand, we do not have an established finance committee as we did in years past. So I have seen my role over the years as working with the administration to facilitate the process and my fellow council members. And I will be, at the will of council, be willing to do that continuing for the next budget cycle, but knowing that it's really a collaborative approach. It's just a matter of keeping the discussion moving forward so we can accomplish. So when the administration is ready to put something forward for our discussion, I think that's when the process starts, whenever that might be.
I would respectfully submit, on last Friday, I believe I sent over a version of the new monthly financial report we're producing.
Right.
At any time council sees fit, happy to go over specific line items, departments, or overall themes. We're also in the process of updating not just the data, but the appearance of the data on the city financial data link that can be found at the top of the website on the main page. So a combination of we're able to explain at will, as well as that public financial transparency link being updated to better communicate information to the public. Both of those are at your disposal.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to Johanny's point, I mean, look, Jamar, even if we had a quarterly executive summary that we put on the committee, the whole meeting, it just, you know, they gave us the highlights, we're up, we're over, we're under in revenue or expenses, et cetera, et cetera. That's the best tool for city council in my experience, because we used to get all these reports with all these numbers. Heck, I couldn't see them with 2 pairs of glasses on. And then to try to decipher them, you know, on the year-to-date kind of status, et cetera, was challenging as well. What was always helpful was like a quarterly 1-page, you know, revenues are on track, revenues are under here, they're over there, we're over expenses, we're under expenses, bam. And then it gives us the ability to see a storm if one's brewing, or positive things as well if they're in development as well. I remember one year we got into a budget. We got like 3 quarters into the year and somebody said we're running a $15 million deficit. I thought, Jesus, and you're telling us in September, you know, so that wasn't a good thing. So to your point, Johanny, there could be some more financial reporting that we can ask for on a quarterly basis, but real simple so we're not overwhelmed by it. Go ahead, Johanny. I know you have a follow-up.
And this is just, I mean, obviously we're going to have new members on council. So is quarterly the rule? Is monthly better? Because if we're having 4 meetings a month, 1 a month, maybe just because I feel like the more we're made aware of the budget, when it comes budget season, we're better prepared and we're not asking a multitude of questions and then rushing through the process and trying to get this budget together. So for me, I would propose, or I would like or recommend that even if it's once a month, I think would be helpful. And it doesn't have to be details, but at least we know this is the budget, this is how we started, this is where we're at the end. I don't know if that's feasible, or maybe every other month.
Yeah, that might be more realistic.
Right.
More realistic, Johanny. I mean, maybe we can, because, you know, to do an executive summary, they got to roll their sleeves up, they got to examine. I mean, you can spend a lot of time examining things that haven't moved much.
Right.
But, you know,
we've also, I mean, we've purchased like this new software, this new system that's kind of streamlining, making things more easily available. Am I correct, right, Jamar? What we passed, that new software system. I don't know if that helps.
Yes, the municipal ERP system. We are currently setting up the design of that system right now. But remember, Counselor, that's 12 to 18-month project.
Okay.
So you won't see immediate results. The only immediate result you will see actually, and this is what we're feverishly working on in the background that you'll never see, is setting up the chart of accounts and design so that we can produce the 2022 budget in the new system digitally. So we're not doing all that Excel spreadsheet nightmare that drove us crazy. We're not printing budget books anymore. You'll be able to respond to a link and in real time, we can make those updates. We'll be able to do all of that in this upcoming budget cycle, provided we get everything teed up beforehand.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, so we're gonna move on because we have a meeting tonight and we have things here on the agenda. The next item is the charter amendment requiring to employ its own solicitor. There were 3 questions. Well, the first thing I asked everybody to try to read the charter ruling and determine whether or not you agreed or disagreed with there now being 2 chief advisory solicitors for the city of Reading. I did not agree with that agreement. So I had forwarded my write-up and that ruling to everybody. Then there were 2 additional questions. Do you have those handy?
Yes, I think.
Because I can't remember them anymore. I think my time has come. Well, while Linda's, go ahead, Linda.
Oh, yeah, I'm just pulling it up.
Okay. So, I don't know if anybody's had a chance to read that advisory opinion and my comments towards it. I mean, somewhere along the line, the body has to concede, come to some sort of consensus that that's not what we agree with, or that's what we agree with. I'm not trying to tell anybody. To me, it doesn't, I rendered my thoughts on it. Anybody else have thoughts on that specific opinion that there's going to be 2 chief advisories for the city of Reading? Marcia, then Johanny.
And I concur with you, Jeff, on this. We have to look at the city solicitor represents the city of Reading as an entity. And even though there may be different perceptions from council, you need one lead solicitor for that, so that I don't know, understand or agree with how the ruling came down. I don't know what we do with it. It was an advisory ruling. If we decide to move in a different direction, does someone then say, okay, we're going to have a charter complaint against city council because we don't agree with the way the charter commission? And then all of a sudden, this whole thing that was meant with good intention gets really out of control. And that's what concerns me the most, is we were looking for a simple answer that when the city council needed to have advisement, that we would be able to secure our own solicitor services, not that we would have dual solicitors representing the city of Reading.
Johanny?
So I don't agree with 2 solicitors. I insist that we should have some type of, I don't know what the right term is, provisions, clauses, I don't know if it's resolution, ordinance, that when there's a potential conflict between administration and city council, that there's a set of standards or process, procedures that the city solicitor is to follow, so that he or she doesn't seem conflicted. Because we've been in situations where the solicitor has been put in a predicament where he or she has to serve 2 masters, and then he's forced to sway or pick sides. So I feel like we need to have something in place that forbids or prevents that from happening, so that the solicitor has the tools to seek either the outside legal counsel before making a decision or a ruling, or before feeling like he has to pick who to represent at any given moment, because at the end of the day, the city is the city, right? We're all part of the city. So that's kind of like where I stand. Like, we have to have some type of provisions.
Okay, so that's somewhat in agreement with what we're saying, at least from the chief advisory, that there's 1 chief advisory officer. And you're right, Johanny, we'll get into those other mechanics in questions 2 and 3. Is there more? Go ahead, Donna.
Yeah, and my concern is this, and this is what I I had said a few weeks ago, and I see that we have this one here. You know, right now, I'm not an attorney, so I can give my opinion, but it's not going to be a legal opinion as what is, you know, how the opinion is interpreted, how the referendum is interpreted. We really need an outside municipally oriented legal counsel so that we're not guessing about it, because we're not going to get anywhere. We can have 15 meetings where we discuss it back and forth. Which of us agrees with what, which of us doesn't? What's the organizational chart of this? Should it be full-time? Should it be consulting? I look to almost hold off having a serious discussion about this till we have obtained an outside legal counsel with expertise in this that can guide us through, because, you know, I respect everybody's opinions on this, and I have my own as well. But again, I'm not coming from a legal mindset. I'm coming from councilmanic, from a mindset of experience over the years of nightmare experiences, both personally and monetarily, what's cost the city. And before we go down any kind of road of charter violations, because we interpret it wrong, whatever, let's look at this RFP. Let's look at these legal counsels that are possibly available. Let's decide on one, and then let's have a serious conversation with their recommendations.
And that's fine, and that's why it's on the list. But I want to make sure that we have a consensus on whether we believe there's a chief legal advisor or someone believes that this referendum means there's two chief legal advisors, because I want to make sure we're clear on that. Because when we go to a solicitor, when we go to outside legal counsel, I want to make sure we have clear questions that we're asking of them, because it's very important to have clear questions to get answers to. So, so far, I hear 3 people believe this isn't. Is there did anybody else read this specific charter opinion? If not, that's fine for now. I think we'll go on to what I want to do before next week's meeting. We'll put this on the committee of the whole again for next week, is have a list of questions everyone feels we need for an outside solicitor. Is that possible? And I need to
Just
have
take some of the questions we've voiced here today.
Well, we have to have them spelled out. I mean, that's not all of them. So we want to have all the questions in place. You know, do we believe that this represents a new chief advisor? Does it have to be full-time? Can it be part-time? Can it be retainer? Can it, you know, what are all the questions?
How is a referendum and the opinion interpreted legally versus us thinking?
Remember, and I just want to, that's why I think it's important for the body to come to its consensus on whether or not they believe this was meant to be an advisor, a second chief advisory council. Because at the end of the day, we could get 50 legal opinions and get 50 different answers.
Well, I do, as a referendum stands, as I've read it, to me, that's what it reads to me.
So to you, it does.
That it is a co-equal solicitor. That's how I read it. And again, I'm not an attorney.
All right, so you don't. Okay. So I'm just going to ask everybody to have their questions ready for next week, so that we are prepared then to choose an outside council member to do that. I don't know that we have to do that tonight. Lucine's not on here tonight as well, and I'd rather she be on the call. So are you okay to deferring the selection till next week? I will send a list out of the questions I have, and we'll use that as a foundation to add other questions too. Is that fair? And that'll remind everybody to have them ready by next week. Okay, good. I'm just trying to keep this moving along. It's not an easy thing to navigate through. I'm foreseeing the need to have this really resolved by budget season, so we're on track if we keep going. You know, that's kind of my timeline here. All right, any other points on that issue? I don't want to cut anybody off. I get myself a lot of trouble.
The only thing I would add is I looked at the Bethlehem 2021 budget and found that the council budgeted 25 grand for their legal representation.
Okay, that's good to know. So they're using kind of a retainer or whatever, we don't know. Okay, so let's, this next item has really grown into something here. I don't know what's going on. Dangerous intersection spreadsheet, pages 12 to 17. I know this was something was it Lucine or someone else originally requested we start looking at? Let me see, 12 to 17. It's grown into quite a list. I can tell you, as I begin to think of this, this is a council kind of effort, I believe, but the only thing I think we can do is ask that the administration take some time to look at this, determine, what, if any, where the city has control over the streets or intersections. What can we do? What should we do? What can we afford to do? And then for the state roads, the ones that are state controlled, I think we'd have to prioritize 3 or 4 of them and ask our RATS members to, as well as Charlie and Stan, to take it to PennDOT and see what they're willing to consider as well. I mean, just on the surface, those are my thoughts. And anybody want to build upon that?
Hey, Jeff, it's Chief Tornelli. Probably, I think the next step that we're going to have to take is, because it's such an extensive list, is the police department will take the next few months. We can do informal traffic studies at all those locations. We'll look at crash data, traffic enforcement data, and then compile a list of what actually is considered a dangerous intersection that we need to look at. And then from there, break it down to ones that are under the city's control that we can take a look at doing more extensive traffic studies with. And then which ones, like you said, we need to prioritize with the state. Because once we do a state traffic study, if they make a recommendation that costs $10 million to implement, we have to do it. We're obligated to do it at that point. So I think us doing the informal studies to actually find out what we're dealing with here, it's actually factually based and not anecdotal. There was a car speeding here one time, so now it's dangerous. We'll take a look at those things and then make an assessment.
Agreed. And if I may, Chief Tornelli, thank you, and Council President. We've looked at the list, and there is other ones that we've seen also. But by happenstance, the city of Reading has engaged 2 very quality traffic engineers, TPD, Traffic Planning Design, along with McCormick Taylor. McCormick Taylor is currently involved in our LFT engineering processes. So we were going to work with them as well to come up with a game plan to identify and understand what each and every intersection is, because other than what Chief Tornelli said, there was a few items that cars were parked a little bit too far into the intersection. And so there's some of the other things we will work then with the parking authority as well, and Chief Tornelli's department, along with either of these 2 consultant engineers, just to get back to hopefully sooner than later.
Okay, additional comments, anyone? Joe Honey.
When, and I thank you, Chief, because I was going to ask if there was data related to incidents at these intersections. And so for both Chief and Stan, when should we anticipate gathering this data to figure out next steps? How long does that process take?
Well, we have a meeting on Thursday, a introductory meeting, our first kickoff meeting, if you will, with traffic planning design, and that'll be brought up into that as well. And I already got a hold of McCormick Taylor today to tell them what we may have on the horizon for them as well. And both of them, I would see a preliminary understanding what the intersections are, working with Chief Tornelli and crash data and speeding. Hopefully have something into, I hate to commit because we have the holidays coming up, into Q3, if you will, sometime after Labor Day, to have an assessment of where we are with a map also.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I would say that it would probably take us at least 3 months to get through the data, especially with us coming into real busy season here.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like the perfect course of action. I mean, council, they need time to look at it. I mean, geez, there's a lot of intersections in the city that you could consider dangerous. They're going to have to pull out try to identify the real dangerous ones. And that's probably something we're doing anyway on an ongoing basis, but this is at least letting the community know we're giving it an extended look where we can, because it's a lot of resources to study these roads. Go ahead, Johanny. Is that another question?
No, just one last thing. I know that on the website, I don't know if there's a sheet missing or the spreadsheet got cut off, but districts 5 and 6 are missing from what's being posted to the public.
Yeah, I saw that too. It looks like it was like a wider spreadsheet, and it just, because I had a bunch of intersections, and I believe you did as well.
When we perform this analysis, the consultants will get back to us. One thing of note is when, Council President, you mentioned it, and so did Chief Tornelli, that if PennDOT does identify you need to do it, but another part of that, if a traffic study is going to be done, the department, PennDOT is going to require an escrow account up front. So if it's estimated to be a $750,000 upgrade, they're going to require that to be escrowed prior to them doing any work.
Sure.
Chief,
Strat, did you have a comment?
yes. You know, all these surveys that we're going to be conducting now to determine these intersections that are so bad, no matter how many surveys we come up with, how many recommendations we come up with, once we put them down as law, they must be enforced. If not, when right now we have 1 million laws on the books that are not being enforced, and if we're just going to add another bundle, it's not going to work. They must be enforced. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional comments?
Jeff, Marcia. When I look at a comparison with the districts, I have to be very upfront with you. I was very conservative about which ones I listed. Okay, only the ones that I felt at the top as the most dangerous. There certainly are maybe a considerable number of ones in District 2, but I guess it's because I'm used to prioritizing where in my workplace, and I'm used to being able to say, okay, what's affordable? So I didn't put everything that was dangerous. I just put what I considered, and I'm not the one to be able to completely ascertain that, what were most dangerous. So I think we have to be careful about how we look at these as far as the list that was just provided by council. So I'm glad that Chief Tornelli and the administration is taking on a different type of process.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, if you think of the city, pretty much every intersection is dangerous in some respects because of the amount of people, the amount of children, the sight lines are impaired often because the amount of cars and parking. I would just encourage the administration to whittle this list down to, what's kind of a limitation impact from a parking standpoint and maybe an enforcement need opposed to what are the real dangerous intersections based on structure and infrastructure and that will take some real solid changes to an intersection to improve it. The rest may be enforcement. In some cases, common sense. I mean, you come up to an intersection sometimes and people park their work van, on the very corner in the yellow, and there's no way you can look around it. And you wonder, why would they do that? So not much we can do to improve that other than enforce things better. And again, in the city, that's a balance. All right. Are there additional questions on this issue? I think that's all we can ask for administration. Take a look at this and we'll wait to hear some progress along the way. All right, thank you. Let's move on now to, what's next on the list here? Agenda review, right? So we're gonna, let me pull up the agenda. Okay. This evening we have Pastor Tony Perez, Johanny Iglesia Can you pronounce that for me?
Iglesia Bautista. There's a typo though. Bautista Betania.
Oh, I still won't remember.
Right.
Okay, from the church.
Yeah, really.
From the church. No, how's that? Okay. All right. So executive session. All right. This evening we're going to have a proclamation recognizing Princess Lovett of as the Olivets Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year. Do we have, is Chris joining us for that? Who's joining us for that presentation, Linda?
Princess says, now I did let her know because I wasn't sure what time the meeting was starting to get online at 6:55. I have a sense that the way we're progressing, we may start sooner than that. And I'm not sure how I can get back in touch with her to let her
Well,
know
if
we're
she
starting
joins
earlier.
us and we're mid-meeting, we'll just hold the ceremony in the middle of the meeting if we
Okay.
have to.
Just to let you know, we'll see whether she's online when we're ready to get to that point.
And do you have that proclamation?
Oh, yeah, I'll be reading that. And I also will be presenting it to her in person at the club later on this week.
So she's, okay, great. That's great. All right, Linda, public comment. How many people? We've gotten some written comment, right?
Right, we have three written comments, and we have one registered who's going to connect with the meeting.
All right. Does somebody want to read the written comment this evening? If not, we'll have Donna. Are you saying yes? Okay. If somebody else wants to, they can join in as well. Okay. All right. And then we'll move on to the approval of the agenda in minutes.
Jeff, I just had one question. I just to defer to Linda. Are you including the one that I also referred to as far as the written comment, the three? Because we don't really have it
Yes,
in
that's
writing.
attached.
Okay.
Well, I did put it in writing.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so under the consent agenda, the first item we have is an award of contract for the demolition of 604 North 9th Street, 519 Cedar Street, 1103 Spruce Street, and 515 Wonder Street in the amount of $219,427 to Northeast Industrial Services Corp. Any comments or questions on that? I will just make a comment. I know we continue to use Northeast. I guess they're doing better. I mean, there was a time where they'd start one project and then leave a pile of bricks and then start another project and go back to, they'd have like 5 projects going at the same time and nothing would ever get done. I'm assuming they've improved. So I have nothing against approving the contract, but every time I see their name, I think of that. Any other comments on that contract? All right, the next item is a resolution authorizing the submission of the 2021 Home Action Plan Amendment in the amount of $774,495.82, $588 from the plan year 2021 acquisition, rehabilitation, and resale project, $100,000 from 2019 acquisition, rehabilitation, and resale project, and $86,000 from the 2021 home program income funds. Assuming these are getting reallocated, who can speak to that? Jamal, are you able to speak to that, or is Jamal on the line here with us?
I'll have to defer to Jamal for that one, Council President.
I'm assuming they're getting reallocated, correct?
And Jeff, I think that Frank would like to speak to that if at all possible.
Yeah, that's fine. Frank, are you available?
Yes, Council President. In regards to what's being asked tonight is, as you suggested, it's a really reallocation, and there's 3 parts to this reallocation. The first one is the $250,000 request. It was initially approved in 2018. The $150,000 request was approved in 2019, but for various reasons, the funds weren't dispersed. So in order to update the home action plan for 2021, we will need to be able to amend that plan to reflect this money that's going to be dispersed. And for 2021, it's just a finalization of a request from Habitat for $588,000. All these funds are going to be used for the Buttonwood Street Gateway project, specifically a large concentration on the 400 block of Miltimore Street. But that's the purpose of these funds, and it's to bring the home plan, funding plan up to date and reflective of how the funds are being spent.
And Jeff, Jamal is also on. And just so you know what kind of person Frank Dembowski is, our chief of staff is on vacation and he made time to be on with us tonight, sir. Thank you.
Oh, wow, vacation. Geez, where'd you go? Is he anywhere nice?
Yes.
All right.
He's not going to say anymore.
I can't even get to the pagoda. Go ahead, Johnny.
So I'm reading that 4 houses will be constructed for single homes as a result of this money? Is that what I'm reading here on this agenda memo?
Actually, it's 8 houses, it's 4 duplexes. So each unit has two houses in it.
So what does it mean then for, it says single family owner occupied new housing construction?
Each unit is a single family occupied, yes.
Oh, but they can have another unit as long as
That's correct. Yeah, it's duplexes, and each one of the units is a single home occupied.
And then I did understand that this money was allocated in prior years and now we're actually going to release it.
It's actually, Frank Dinbowski was correct in saying that the 2018, 2019 was never given to Habitat for Humanity. And at that time, it was a question about where the fund will go. The city has a program in which it will not actually dedicate the money to the end users, but it will dedicate it to the program. So we have a program for acquisitions, rehabbing, and rental. And for some reason, it was not actually transferred to that. So we are providing them with that $100,000, as well as the $86,000 for the year 2021, as well as we have dedicated $577,000 to help with the renovation of the Buttonwood projects altogether. So that is a new development, and it will complement what the Delaware Development Company is doing on the other side of that. Okay, so you'll have a beautiful complex altogether between affordable housings as well as rental units.
So Habitat will be working with the Delaware Development Company?
Habitat has not yet, they will be working with them. Yes, there will be a synergy in there. Habitat is just about wrapping up their planning, land development planning approval. And at that point in time, they will go to constructions. How do they go to constructions? Whether they bid the job or they can work with the existing contractor on site, I honestly don't know.
Okay, additional comments or questions on this reallocation? All right, if not, we're going to move on to the next item under the consent agenda. It's a resolution authorizing the solicitor to execute the forms accepting the repository bid submitted by the Berks County Tax Claim Office for the following properties: 523 Maple, 709 and 735A Neversink Alley, and denying the repository bid for 442 Rosenthal Street. Are there any comments or questions regarding that resolution? If not, we'll move on to the next one, the resolution authorizing the mayor and the controller to use the PennDOT dot grants online reporting system to file the required liquid fuels forms annually, including but not limited to the MS 965, MS.-329, and MS 999 forms through the adoption of this resolution, which must be executed by a majority of council. Any comments or questions on that? Seems like a protocol to give them the authority to use the online system. That's what I'm saying. Johanny?
So this online system, so does that mean that funds will be released like at a faster rate? So we're just upgrading the way we report and receive?
Yes, Johanny, you're absolutely correct. With the PennDOT updates, that's exactly what's going to happen, especially MS 999. That's very integral to the approval fund being released for our liquid fuels. It trended about 2 to 3 months. Now we should be getting it done within a month. Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to the next resolution authorizing the submission of an application for RACP funds in the amount of $4 million for the Alvernia University College Town Infrastructure and Renovation Project as required by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is RCAP funds, right?
That is correct, Council President, yes.
Okay, so Who wants to provide an overview for that? I know this was part of their need as their overall project, and they're just looking for council to approve the submission of the application. And at this point, they're just applying.
Right.
All right. Any comments or questions, anyone? Johanny?
Does the city, like, so is this a grant? Is this money that has to be paid back? And then is the city like liable or financially responsible for this? Or is just, we're just facilitating it for over?
You're right, Counselor. It's a facilitation of the funding, and it is a grant. It is not a loan of any kind. And the recipient is responsible for all fiduciary aspects of the.
Thank you.
All right, the next resolution is authorizing the submission of the sewage planning module for 114 through 118 Belvedere Avenue. Pretty self-explanatory. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that or not. All right, if not, we will move on to this evening. We're going to have the administrative report with Abe and I guess Frank if necessary, and then the auditor, Maria, she's on with us this evening, correct?
Caroline.
Caroline Rodriguez is stepping in.
Oh,
It's me.
Caroline.
Hi.
Oh, you're going to give the auditor's report.
Yes, I will.
All right. Anything you need to know ahead of time or no? You're okay?
No, we're good. Thank you.
All right. We'll try to keep our questions pointed and clear. All right. Tonight we have a brief report from Harb, from Aaron, and hopefully we'll get a good update on what Harb's been up to. And then we're going to move on to ordinances for final passage. The first ordinance is amending the City Code Chapter 576 Vehicles and Traffic Section 503, clarifying that parking meter enforcement is exempt on Sundays, New Year's Day, Memorial Day, blah, 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 most of the holidays. Any comments or questions on this? I think we had a chance to go over that. This is just kind of formalizing that. Is that correct, Linda?
Correct.
All right. All right, if there's no comments or questions, we'll move on to the next ordinance. That is 44, 2021, amending the City Code Chapter 576 Vehicles and Traffic, Part 13, motorized devices and all-terrain vehicles by modifying the enforcement process and adding due process and an appeals process, which will allow the police department to inevitably destroy the vehicles seized. Any comments or questions on this? This is something council has worked with the administration and the police department to try to solidify. Go ahead, Johanny.
Can someone elaborate on that? What do you mean destroy? Well, what do we do now that we're modifying? And what do you mean by destroying vehicle?
Somebody answer that for us.
Yeah, so currently there's no provision in the ordinance for the police department to seize and then destroy these vehicles that aren't legally owned. So if someone doesn't have the legal documentation that they own the ATV or the dirt bike, we need a process in place so that if when we seize them for that reason or because they're being illegally operated, there has to be an appeals process in place so that these individuals can have an opportunity to provide that information if they can produce it before they're destroyed. The reason why we're seeking to destroy these vehicles, once we go through the appeals process and there is no proof of ownership, we can't determine who the actual owner is because the majority of these actually aren't registered. Nobody possesses the legal documents that say they own it, so we can't return property that we don't know who it belongs to. It allows us to destroy it so that they don't wind up back on the street. If we allow it to go through the process, like we do with abandoned vehicles, somebody could just come in and buy it and then have them back out in the street again, and we'll have the same problem all over again.
Marcia?
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, Chief, is there any concern that some of these might be stolen and might actually need to be evidenced? I'm just not sure where these people are getting these vehicles at, whether they're ones that they purchased with their own funds and don't have the documentation, or whether they come from somewhere else.
Yeah, we run any VIN number, serial number to determine if the vehicles are stolen at the time they're seized.
Okay.
And then from there, if they're not, then they're just held until we go through this process to dispose of them.
Yeah, because the comment I'm making, some of these are very expensive vehicles. You can tell that they weren't come by at a low cost. So that's why I question, when you look at the amount of vehicles out on the street, the dollar amount behind them is probably incredible.
All right, any additional comments, Johanny?
Can Donna go first? And then I'll go after Donna.
Go ahead, Donna.
Just a quick question I'd asked before, are any of these vehicles likely to be able to be used by our fire department, like or all-terrain for brush fires, things like that? Is there any way to, that any of them can be helpful to the city? I guess I imagine you're looking at each one separately, is that correct?
Yeah, we're going through the process for these vehicles individually. So it is something we have discussed internally, is whether or not any of these vehicles would be beneficial for the fire department, say when they have to do remove an injured hiker from up on the trails or something.
Okay, Johanny?
Yeah, and my questions were more along those lines, like, is there an opportunity to repurpose the vehicles versus destroying them? And also, is there a cost of destroying them? Or, yeah, if we can get creative with how we utilize them, I think that might be more either cost effective or beneficial.
It depends on the process of how they're destroyed. I mean, typically, if we're gonna scrap them like we would a vehicle, or the city could actually receive funds for the materials. Again, this is a small dirt bike, so it's not like we're gonna get a couple $100 like we would for scrap from a car or an SUV. But as far as I know, I don't believe there's any cost associated with the destruction.
And one last thing, because I'm always trying to think proactively and like, you know, how do we generate income? Like, I don't know if there's any thoughts or plans for future, if there's space allocated maybe for dirt bikes so that, I don't know, people can pay to ride on a certain trail, or just a thought, just for future, since I think this is going to be an ongoing problem. Do we designate a space for this to exclusively take place, and people need permits and have to pay to participate, whatever? Just trying to think out the box.
All right, are there additional comments or questions? All right, the next ordinance is amending the city code fee schedule to 12-144 by adding fees for the towing, relocation, and storage of ATVs and dirt bikes. This was introduced at the May 24th regular meeting. You can see the list of fees that are listed there. And this is probably aimed at bringing it up more to the realistic costs that it costs us to do this stuff. So any comments or thoughts on this fee schedule?
Jeff, it's Marcia.
Yeah.
My question is how we educate the public regarding all of what we are considering tonight, if indeed everything is passed, that I don't think that folks think about there being any cost associated with it. Just a matter of they have these machines that they're going to do whatever they want to, and they probably don't think of the danger they're causing, the disruption to the neighborhoods. I think it's more of let's show off what we have, what our vehicle is. So how do we really get to the grassroots level to do some education? Because it's really turning into, and it's not only in Reading, it's across Pennsylvania and probably across the country. It's a real cultural norm now that I'm going to have this bike to show off. And they go beyond bikes. There's the three-wheel, I don't even know what you call them, the three-wheeled motorcycles that have become really popular. I see when I go up to the pagoda, a lot of folks are bringing those vehicles up there. So again, the education is really key.
All right, additional comments, anyone?
I guess I wanted some direction from the administration on what, it's not where we might be going with education. And how as counselors, we can help with that too.
Well, I think we've done a lot with education in terms of, notifying folks that these vehicles aren't legal to ride, what you need to do to make them legal to ride. It would just be a continuation of that process.
Okay.
To get that information, continuously to push that information out on a regular basis.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, and everyone should know if it's a motorized vehicle in any capacity and it's not licensed through the state of Pennsylvania, it doesn't even belong in the city or anywhere else. I mean, guys riding mini bikes up the middle of Cotton Street with bandanas on doing wheelies, they're not looking for a whole lot of education, They're trying to terrorize neighborhoods and And it makes it challenging. I mean, even for things like what Johanny's suggesting, it'd be nice if there was a small group of people that we could, have a mini bike track somewhere in the city for, but we can't get the 24-year-olds to follow the basic laws. And, I don't know how much education other than what the chief and the police department are trying to achieve, getting some of these people off the streets who are literally terrorizing neighborhoods. Literally. And I applaud the administration for trying to tackle this, because what's going to happen is a 3 or 4-year-old is going to get killed one day when one of these bikes flies out from underneath of one of these guys doing a wheelie up the middle of the city street, and it flies. And I've witnessed these bikes flying up sidewalks. If some little 3-year-old steps off of his porch onto the sidewalk, he'd get destroyed. So, the message to everybody, if it's not registered in the state of Pennsylvania, get it off of our streets. And I think this is the first round in trying to help the police get this issue tackled. It's unfortunate. It's like the fireworks issue. It's like babysitting. They could spend more time being integrated with the community, get to talk to people and doing other things, but they're busy chasing this stuff around, and it's got to stop. And I don't know if it's happening in all the cities, but it's got to stop. These bikes are loud and they're dangerous. And I bet there's a lot of parents who are afraid to put their kids even out on the sidewalk in some neighborhoods because of these bikes.
Jeff, I think there has to be, education is good. I wish it would work. I'm a little concerned that it hasn't, but also as these new regulations go forward, there has to be a good cooperation, either with the press, with the local press, or internally. We have to publicize when people are arrested, when these things are confiscated. Because unless people know that there's teeth to this, and this sort of alludes to what Stroud was saying earlier, unless people know that the enforcement, and I believe it is happening, I understand that it's happening, but we have to make it very, very clear that you're not, it's more than us sitting here talking at a council meeting, that you're going to lose that bike. You might have a fine, and if you're recklessly endangering others, you may be arrested and going to trial. I think we have to, and I know no one likes to be punitive, but I don't, I agree with you, Jeff. I don't want to see any child in the city, and many of us have our own grandchildren. So it's personal as well as it's personal because we love all the kids. We don't want to see those people endangered or our seniors endangered. So please, let's make a point of those folks who are doing the bad stuff or having to pay for it. Let's publicize it and let's get that point across, because that's going to be effective as education.
Johanny, they know it. They already know it. They know this is a cat and mouse game. They know the people doing this are already, they paint their face so nobody can identify them. But there's people that live in their blocks and their neighborhoods. They know where they're parking these bikes and what garages. If they want to call that into the police department to at least give them a tip on where some of this might be coming. But these guys on these bikes, they know very well. They know very well that they don't belong on the streets. They're not looking to be educated or to follow the law. They're just willing to take the chance. And that's what they do every day. They hop on one of these bikes. And the day, I guess they ran into the one officer when they surrounded him. I think that was pretty much the end of the line. I think as city council members and the city administration, we have to do everything we can to support the police's effort. And this is part of that, to try to get this thing under control. But I'm not of the school that these guys don't know what's going on, and they know very well what's going on, and they're playing the game. And until somebody one of them got killed last year, right? And maybe a couple more of them are going to end up getting killed, but I don't even think that's going to change it. Who knows? But we need the community to let the police know where these bikes are, who's parking them where, do it quietly, call the desk sergeant number, give them the information and let them track it down, because 164 police officers can't fix this. It's going to take the community. It says, we don't want them in our city. That's it. Johanny, go ahead.
Now, I was just wondering if signage would be helpful. Same way we have signs for no parking or fines associated with whatever, would that be helpful to have more signage so that people know that we mean business?
Honestly, I don't think signage, I don't think any other education is going to help. These idiots that are riding these dirt bikes up and down the streets, they know that it's illegal because they run from our cops when we chase them or we try to stop them. So no amount of education, no amount of signs is going to help. It's just poor behavior, people who don't give a care about the neighborhood that they live in or the people who they potentially can harm. So we're just gonna have to stick with the aggressive enforcement we've been doing. We're gonna chase them as often as we can when we can do it safely. And we're using other means that we have to identify these folks and eventually go back and lock them up and seize their property. I mean, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I've had the discussion too with Abe that, you know, council will support whatever it takes. If we need an overtime detail, if we need specialized bikes for the officers with all the safety equipment, somebody else, another biker's going to get killed, and that's unfortunate. But I'm telling you, a little kid's going to get killed. I'm surprised it hasn't, and it's not our fault. We're trying to do everything we can. But I agree with the chief. There's no education. These guys, I see them all the time. This isn't about not knowing what they're doing wrong. Not only do they know what they're doing wrong, they're doing it anyway. Marcia, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and maybe when I talk about the education, I agree with what's being said about the bikers themselves. Where I think the education needs to come for these younger children who are enthralled by the thrill of these bikes. Some of them are their siblings that are doing it, and they think it's okay too. And I've been confronted by them when I say, this isn't illegal, what's going on? Well, that's my uncle doing that. Yeah, he's pretty cool. Why aren't you letting him have fun, miss? And so it's the young people who don't understand the danger that they're in. And they're the ones that are most at risk because they're watching what's going on and thinking, I can't wait till I'm of the age that I can get on one of those bikes and charge around the city. So that's where, you know, it's where the education occurs, not necessarily by the offenders, by the younger people and also the parents who, some of them may not care, but, you know, there just needs to be around the board. So however we decide to go, I completely support all the enforcement that needs to occur and what we're doing, but I think we need to look at changing the culture of acceptance of this type of behavior. Because you see the younger kids trying to mimic them. They're getting motorized bicycles and they're doing wheelies down the street just the same way the ones with the dirt bikes are. Okay, so it's not, they're starting young with whatever their parents will buy them and trying to be like the big guys.
All right. Well, you know, I think that's true. And Marcia, it's a good point. And again, if you want to be an uncle, be an uncle and treat your nieces and nephews the right way on a lot of things, but hopefully, you know, the same with the parents as well. So, and there's a lot of good parents and a lot of good uncles out there. So let's not, but I get your point.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, if there's nothing else on that, let's move on into Bill 47.
Jeff, you missed Bill 45, 2021, which is another component of the ATV.
All right, there we go. It looks the same as 44. So this is right on line with the other two, amending city code chapter.
Right, this just, it assigns the appeals process and the forfeiture process to the Code and License Appeals Board.
Gotcha. So 45-2021, amending the Boards and Commissions Code License Appeals Board by adding Appeals 576 relevant to motorized devices and all-terrain vehicles, introduced at the May 24th regular meeting, similar to the other two, aimed at shoring up the process. So are there any comments or questions on that ordinance? Johanny?
Just going back to 44, can we add destroy and or repurpose the vehicles versus just destroy? Because what if there's an opportunity to do something else with it? It doesn't hold us to the destruction of the vehicle.
It doesn't hold them to the destruction of the vehicle. It uses that as an option. Which may, if forfeiture is awarded, the police department shall dispose of the vehicle in an appropriate manner, which may include destruction of the vehicle to reduce the opportunity for the vehicle to be used in any manner that would violate this section.
Thank you, Linda.
All right, any questions on 45? All right, if not, I'm going to move on down to 47, authorizing appropriations transfer of $241,000 from the General Fund Rental Parking Authority Capital Fund Public Works Parks to enable the construction of the Canal Street Skate Park introduced at the May 24th regular meeting. Any comments or questions on?
The administration asked that we table this ordinance because we're having a presentation on it next Monday.
All right, so somebody would, if you don't mind making that motion at the time. We'll move on to the next ordinance, Bill 48-2021, restricting parking to maintain the requisite number of no parking signs along both sides of North 9th Street in the 11 and 1200 blocks as depicted on the parking drawing titled Exhibit A. The purpose is to comply with the conditions of PennDOT Highway Occupancy Permit Application number 238205 associated with the Marion Street Fire Station project that was introduced at the May 24th regular meeting. I think we got a diagram on that earlier today. Is that the same diagram?
Correct. However, the administration would like this to be tabled as well. PennDOT submitted some requests for change. So that's going to put the ordinance on hold and the first resolution as well.
Okay, good, because that diagram went way over my head. I couldn't follow, man. I had a hard time. That's great. So somebody will make that motion to table that as well. We'll move on to the final ordinance authorizing the total appropriations transfer of $294,336.75 from general fund rental parking authority to general fund part-time wages in order to increase base pay to $15 for most part-time staff introduced at the May 24th regular meeting. Is that, hey, we talked about that. Was that number accurate?
Yes, sir, it is. Yes, we've had it corroborated on several occasions, but that number is accurate.
And that's for how many part-time employees?
We have 66 on the books.
And the 294 is specifically for 2021?
I believe it is.
294, just do 66, 44.57. I'm just doing some quick math here, folks. Divided by 52. 85. I'm still pressed on that number. I don't know why. Can anybody break that out for us a little bit?
Council President, this is Frank. The 66 part-timers are the year-round part-timers, but we do have seasonal employees, particularly in the Parks Department, that have to be taken in consideration for that calculation.
Do you know how many that is, Frank? Just curious.
I would be guessing, so I wouldn't want to do that. So I would almost have to ask maybe Stan or
Yes, I can answer that. We have at any given point 6 to 8, and we also have people employed in the solid waste division as well. So the number fluctuates, and as we all well know, at $12 an hour, it's hard to keep a strong dedicated workforce, and this just allows us to get good people on board.
Okay. Okay, makes a little more sense. Any other comments or questions on this specific ordinance? Go ahead, Johanny.
So we received, I'm just trying to understand. So this money is coming from the parking authority and going into the general fund. So did we receive that amount already from the parking authority?
We will receive that amount over the course of the year from the parking authority, yes. And they have increased from their initial or the previous monthly payments to the new monthly payment of $146,000. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we received the March allocation. We will receive the April and May as of tomorrow. I'm expecting those checks to be hand delivered by the parking authority CFO.
So is this process to reallocate something that we don't have, even because we know we're receiving it, or should we wait to receive to then reallocate? I'm just trying to understand the process.
This process gives us the permission to make the increase. We are not necessarily going to immediately make that increase without having already received the funding.
So
This
again,
just gives us the permission.
so should we wait to receive the money? I mean, the increase is fine, but it's saying that it's coming from the parking authority entity or fund into the general fund. So I'm just trying to, just math, business.
I get it.
Wait to have the
So
money
again,
when we move it, or we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna approve this now, and then when we get the money, then we'll do the increases. Like, it doesn't make sense.
So Councilor Cepeda Freitas, That's how the budget process is approved generally. So remember, when you as counselors approve the budget in December, it's a $93 million budget. On January 1st, we don't have $93 million sitting in the bank account to pay out on all of those line items. So it's a similar process. We are reallocating the additional revenue that you authorized to increase the size of this budget back in April. And we are itemizing those accounts as we, deem them judicious to make those allocations. But it's not necessarily a dollar for dollar line as I think you're kind of looking at.
Yeah, guys, do you mind if I?
So for it, so
I like to
if I
look
could,
at this thing.
one,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jamar.
I'm sorry. In the financial report that I sent you for the month of May, our revenues are currently at 45 million, but our expenses are at 35 million for the year. So there's also always going to be a fluctuation, if you will, between revenue coming in and expenditures going out.
All right, guys, I'd like to, I'm going to ask that we table this if you guys would be willing to get us a breakout of this cost a little bit. I just, for my own comfort level, I'm not in any way trying to be, I understand the need because of the, the wage wars, nobody wants to work right now, but I need to understand that 294 a little bit. Will somebody be able to get me a breakout maybe in the next 2 weeks?
I'll get it to you by Thursday, Council President.
That's great. Marcia?
Yeah, and I understand your request to table. My concern is by tabling this, and when the next time we come into a voting meeting, how that might impede the administration from being able to advertise positions that need to be filled. So I don't want, I understand your caution, but I'm just concerned about how that's going to affect the efficiency of the government.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know, is the 2 weeks holding anybody up here? If so.
It's going to be longer than 2 weeks though, isn't it?
No.
Okay.
No.
But if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Kelly's mentioned that they wouldn't do anything until the money was secure. Did I not understand that?
Well, I think it's getting a little confusing, Johanny.
Okay.
They're just stating that those dollars as they arrive are going to be used for this need, just like Jamar was explaining, as tax revenues come in during our budget at the end of the year, we project this is where we're going to spend them. So, it's okay to earmark things that way. I'm not holding anything up if we get if we push this out 2 weeks, am I? Administration.
I think we can wait the 2 weeks, but I'd really hate to wait past that, quite honestly.
Oh, no, it won't be any longer. No, that'd be fine. Johanny?
And then will it, if whether we wait or don't wait, so if we wait, all right, we approve, will this be retroactive? And if so, retroactive to what date? Or are we doing the increases upon approval?
It's upon approval. This is Frank. This isn't like a contract of any sort. It's basically from the time the council approves it. And then I guess when an ordinance takes effect, 5 or 10 days or something, there's some kind of period from there. So it'll match up to the pay period, coincide for the next pay period.
I need to see the positions, current amount, and what we're taking them to. I just need to understand these numbers. My math bothers me sometimes, so I just want to make sure we're all okay with this.
All right, we'll get you those numbers.
All right, thank you, guys. The next item on the agenda is ordinance 48, 2021. Sorry, I lost my screen here.
We're up to introduction of new ordinances.
Sorry, yeah, I just realized that. Okay, so introduction of new ordinances. The first one is authorizing the administration to enter into a one-year intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the Reading School District with the option for subsequent one-year renewals at both parties' written agreement regarding the collection, transportation, and processing of various recyclable items generated from the Reading School District. This is effective July 1st, 2021. I think that's a continuation of an existing practice, but I'll leave. Anybody want to walk us through what that means?
Yes, Council President. What this is, and you're correct, it's a continuation. It is where we assist Reading School District with their recyclables. It's been working out very well. It's been somewhat seamless, actually. So they're one of our better partners.
Okay, great. Any other comments or questions, anyone? Johanny?
So is this part of our municipal trash agreement? Is it separate from that? And do we do our own recycling?
Johanny, this is Frank. This was implemented actually in 2010 when I worked in the recycling department. It was when we developed the intergovernmental agreements with the school district on education, on collection. So this is kind of an ongoing process that's been going on for the last 12 years. Some of the things have changed a little bit in regards to how we market material, on how some of our collection techniques, but those are more of the technical changes. But for all intents and purposes, it's the same ongoing agreement that requires to be renewed over a period of time, and the renewal is up for this time. So what we are charging is pretty much the cost of what it costs to collect the material. It's not meant to really create a revenue stream as much as a cooperative effort with the school district as we share resources in recycling.
All right, any other comments or questions? If not, we're going to move on to the next ordinance for introduction. Authorizing a budget transfer within the wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $332,700 for employee training and develop or operational support tools and manual for optimization of new treatment plant processes, and funds to provide operational support and guidance related to control and upsets. Who can give us some insight to that specific ordinance?
Yes, Council President, I can speak to this. This is the ongoing process of the building of the wastewater treatment plant. We are in substantial completion as we speak, and this is to help our rank and file, if you will, along with management, to ensure that we do not have the upsets that we experienced in August and then October of this year, where the DEP, both on the state and federal level, will come back and fine us. We want to ensure that we do have the finest plan in terms of operations, in terms of water quality and air quality. And this would allow us to develop best practices, standard operating procedures and the like, down to something as simple as maintaining a rooftop air conditioning system, to then looking at the flows of the solid side and the liquid side. So it's going to be very precise and accurate. And it's going to be very detailed, and it's going to be a long process.
Yeah, Stan, are we using an outside resource to facilitate that?
Yes, sir. The city engaged a company by the name of Hazen and Sawyer many years ago. They are the premier wastewater treatment plant water engineering firm in the country. They helped us in the upset that we had in October. They have some smart, super smart, and very willing people. If we make a phone call, they pick up the phone. That's how good and good valued partner. And Fred could also speak to that as well, and how dedicated they are to our success.
Great.
Sometimes it doesn't happen, and these people are a valued consultant. Glad to have these people on board.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Any additional comments or questions? All right, thank you, Stan. We'll move on now to the next ordinance, is setting the salary of the solicitor at $97,375 per year, payable in equal bi-monthly installments or as otherwise provided by the ordinance. I believe this is just bringing it up to speed to where it was. Who wants to speak to that? Does somebody? Is that true?
That's exactly right, Council President. It's not anything different than the last salary that was being paid.
All right, thank you, Abe. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on to the next ordinance, and that is authorizing a budget transfer of $260,000 from the 2021 capital Public Works Pagoda Wall repair to Capital Public Works Garage for a garage class 8 and fire truck lifts and permanent hot water steam cleaning machine HOTC, allowing the replacement of class 8 lift and permanent steam cleaning machine HOTC for the garage fleet division Public Works to be distributed Monday. So anybody want to give us just kind of a quick oversight on the HOTC?
If I may, the hot seat is a machine that cleans the underside of our street equipment along with some of the other machines as well, that with a long power hose. But the interesting part about having a hot cleaning device is especially the salt that builds up during the winter months comes off very quickly. And so we're able to get back out on the streets, number one. But number two is we extend the life of our snow removing machinery as well. Just the salt spreaders, the plows, the undercarriage itself of all the trucks. So that works out very well. And then the lift itself, it's going to allow us to lift up some of the larger apparatuses that the fire department has, number one. But number two, probably in my opinion, more importantly, it's going to allow for the safety of our workers to effectively work on the machines and have no fear of getting hurt, because that sometimes does prevent us from diagnosing correctly on site versus sending out the truck that have these lifts as well. So a lot of that is majority, in my opinion, is for the safety of our employees.
Just Dan, what's the lifespan of this type of equipment?
Lifespan of the HOTC is about 5 years.
Okay.
The lifespan of the lifts can be anywhere from 15 to 25, depending on how they are maintained. I suspect in our way of doing business is going to be closer to 25, because our garage crew is very adapted, making sure all the machines are operationally correct.
Good. All right, any questions or comments on that specific ordinance? We're going to have a chance to vote on that in 2 weeks. Donna, then Marcia, then Johanny.
Yeah, just for clarification, Stan, am I first or not?
Yeah, you can be first. Go ahead.
Okay, just a clarification, Stan. I know that we had the pagoda wall for many years now being on the agenda for repairs, and there are some concerns. Where does that fall in line then with capital projects?
That falls right in line. Actually, I'm meeting with Tammy Reinhardt on Wednesday to confirm all the other projects we have coming out for the pagoda. You may have noticed that they started the safety improvements of the fence.
Right.
So this is all in line with that then, Marcia.
Okay.
Because
Thank
we
you.
also discussed the trail too, if you remember. And then we also have we're meeting on Thursday regarding the camera systems, working with the police department. And then we expect to have our bids back for the traffic safety improvements by Tuesday of next week.
Great. Okay, thank you. I just wanted updated. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Donna, then Johanny.
Now is my question, what impact this has on the pagoda wall situation? The whole situation up there, but obviously.
Yeah, we and I started understanding the geotechnical a little bit more, and we actually took some string lines and trying to understand exactly what is there. It appears that we're going to definitely have to have some borings and core samples and understand exactly, because that darn thing was built so well. But now she's shown his age because of the water infiltration. As you see, some of the blocks are a tendency to, so we did that the other day, and we did some sound testing as well. So, and the traffic improvements are also going to help us immensely because of the, we're channeling the water away. So that, and that should help us also extend the life, hopefully another 50 years minimally.
So the actual you're seeking here will not delay anything.
Oh, no, not at all.
Or endanger.
Oh, not at all.
Like that.
No, not
It
at all.
all goes, you have protocol and the time frame all set up to go forward. And this done well, as you're saying, with this HOTC and the lift, will will actually enhance all of our, the lifespan of our equipment out there.
Yeah, we have
Win-win.
good people at the garage, correct, and it's gonna really help, it's gonna help them and the crew, and it also helps some of the other divisions as well, like our sanitary sewer division. But we have a good garage foreman and Chris Yeager, and then we have very good mechanics, you know, they're all very good people, very dedicated.
All right, Johnny?
It was a very similar question. I just wanted to make sure that there was enough money to repair that wall and that that's also prioritized, because I know it's been spoken about for numerous years now, are repairing the wall at the pagoda.
Yes, the consultant, we are bringing the, as I said, meeting with Tammy on Wednesday at 11 o'clock about prioritizing, and this is, in my opinion, number one. That's the next RFP we're putting out, because the first thing we wanted to do is make sure the water was being diverted. To me, that was the key component, which is now happening. This is the second of a series that we have to do.
All right, thank you everyone for those questions. We're going to move on now to the final portion of the agenda, resolutions. The first one is authorizing the submission of a PennDOT permit application for driveways, warning sign devices, parking restrictions, and similar features and related PennDOT forms to secure a permit for the 9th and Marion Fire Station. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Does anybody have any comments or questions relevant to that resolution?
That needs to be tabled.
Yes, that needs to be tabled.
Okay. Somebody will make that motion, right? All right. And then the next resolution is appointing Samantha Martinez Escobar to the Youth Commission representing District 2, right?
Yes, it's interesting. We're going to be starting the meeting with honoring someone from District 2, one of our young ladies, and ending the meeting with the same thing.
All right, great. That's great. Good for District 2, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, before we leave this meeting for our regular business meeting, is there anything urgent that needs to be discussed in public this evening? Again, we'll have another committee of the whole meeting next week, and of course we have a regular meeting. But is there a topic that anybody needed to touch upon, whether it's council or the administration, before we proceed into our regular meeting? Okay, if not, it's let's get start at 7 o'clock sharply. That means by 5 of 4 of everyone should be logged in. So I would wait a minute or two, log in, and we'll start the meeting right at 7 o'clock. Okay. Let's see if we can make it on time. I'm curious. Thank you.